The crosshairs settled on the ridgeline 300 yards distant. Through the Schmidt and Bender scope, the world reduced to a single point of absolute clarity. Wind from the northeast at maybe 4 miles per hour. Humidity high from the morning rain, still dripping from Douglas fir needles. Temperature dropping as afternoon shadows stretched across the Cascade Valley floor. Maya Reeves was 18 years old and she had forgotten what it felt like to miss. Her finger rested against the trigger guard, not on the trigger itself, not yet. Patience, her father had taught her, was the difference between a shooter and a marksman. Anyone could pull a trigger and hope. A marksman waited for the perfect convergence of breath and heartbeat in a moment when the universe itself seemed to pause. But that was now. That was the girl who had become something else entirely over 5 years of solitude and survival and choices no child should ever have to make. This story begins before that, before the rifle, before the blood, before the mountains taught her what textbooks never could about the fine line between predator and prey. This story begins in summer sunshine with a father and daughter in the last ordinary day of childhood. July 14th, 2019. The cabin stood in a clearing that Dr. James Reeves had chosen specifically for its unremarkable nature. Not too close to trails, not visible from the logging roads that scarred the lower elevations. Just another weathered structure in 10,000 square miles of Pacific Northwest wilderness, where the trees grew so thick that sunlight itself became a precious commodity. Maya was 13 that summer, small for her age with dark hair kept in a perpetual ponytail and eyes that her mother always said saw too much. She had her father's intensity, that focused attention that could make a butterfly landing on a fern seem like the most important event in the universe. Right now, that intensity was directed at a set of wolf tracks in the mud beside the creek that ran behind the cabin. Her father crouched beside her, his weathered field notebook open to a page dense with sketches and measurements and observations written in the precise hand of someone who understood that details mattered, that in nature every small thing connected to every other small thing in ways both obvious and invisible. 4 toes, he said quietly, claws visible in the impression. See how the center 2 toes are larger? That's your canine pattern, different from a dog. Maya nodded, already sketching the print in her own notebook. She had been doing this since she was old enough to hold a pencil, learning to see the way her father saw, learning to read the landscape like a language that most people had forgotten how to speak. She measured the print carefully, 4.5 inches across, pressed deep into the soft earth near the water's edge. Big one, she said. Her father smiled. That's our alpha female. I've been tracking this pack for 3 years now. She's the matriarch, smart, cautious, keeps the pack safe by keeping them invisible. He stood, scanning the tree line with eyes that never quite stopped analyzing. Even in rest, James Reeves was always working, always observing. It was what made him one of the most respected wildlife ecologists in the Pacific Northwest, and what had driven Maya's mother quietly insane over the years, until the divorce became inevitable. Maya had chosen summers with her father, chose the forest and the silence, and the education that no classroom could provide. Her mother, Sarah, worried constantly from her practice in Seattle, where she spent her days helping other people process their anxieties, while developing several new ones about her daughter growing up half wild in the mountains. But Maya was happy here, happier than she ever was in the city with its crowds and noise and expectations. Here she could breathe. Here she belonged. They spent the afternoon checking trail cameras, documenting movement patterns, collecting scat samples that would be analyzed later for diet composition and genetic markers. Science was a process of patience. Her father said that often. You could not rush understanding. You had to let it come to you in its own time. As the sun angled toward the western ridges, painting the valley in shades of amber and gold, they returned to the cabin. James built a fire in the stone fireplace he had constructed by hand 5 years earlier. Maya pulled out the chessboard. This was their evening ritual. Dinner, then chess, then her father's stories about the forest, about the complex social structures of wolf packs, and the migration patterns of elk herds, and the delicate balance that kept ecosystems functioning, about how everything was connected to everything else, and how humans had spent the last century systematically destroying connections they did not even know existed. But tonight, something was different. Maya felt it in the way her father kept glancing toward the windows, in the way his attention drifted from the chess game. Even when she made an obvious mistake, he would normally have exploited ruthlessly. "Dad," she said, "what's wrong?" James looked at her for a long moment. The firelight caught the lines around his eyes, the gray threading through his dark hair. He was 41 but looked older. The mountains aged people differently than cities did. Harder but somehow more authentic. "I need to show you something," he said finally. He stood and moved to the bookshelf that covered the cabin's north wall. Maya watched as he reached behind a field guide to Pacific Northwest mammals and pressed something. There was a soft click, and a section of the shelf swung inward on hidden hinges. Maya's eyes widened. How long had that been there? Her father pulled out a metal case, military surplus from the look of it. He set it on the table and opened it carefully. Inside were papers, maps, a satellite phone, and something that made Maya's breath catch. A rifle. Not a hunting rifle. She knew what those looked like from the gun racks in the general store 30 miles down the mountain. This was different. Sleek and black with a scope that probably cost more than their truck. Professional. Purpose-built. "This is a Remington 700, James said quietly. .308 Winchester. It was your grandfather's. He taught me to shoot when I was your age." Maya had never met her grandfather. He had died before she was born. Some kind of accident was all her father ever said. "Why are you showing me this now?" "Because you need to learn." He looked at her steadily. "I hope you never need to use it, but hope isn't a strategy." Over the next 2 hours, as darkness fell outside and the fire burned low, James taught his 13-year-old daughter the fundamentals of marksmanship: how to hold the rifle, how to control her breathing, how to squeeze rather than pull the trigger, how to compensate for distance and wind and the curve of the earth itself over long ranges. They did not fire it. That would come later, he said. First, you learn the theory, the mechanics, the responsibility. "This is not a toy," he said. "This is not for hunting. This is only ever to be used if there is no other choice. Do you understand?" Maya nodded. She did not fully understand, but she trusted her father absolutely. If he said she needed to learn this, then she would learn it. He showed her the maps next. Topographical charts of the surrounding area, marked with notations in his precise handwriting. Cache locations, water sources, shelter sites, escape routes. "If something ever happens," he said, "if I am ever not here and you need help, there are supplies hidden. Here, here, and here." He pointed to 3 locations on the map. One was only a mile from the cabin. The others were further out, deeper into the wilderness. "Why would I need this?" Maya asked. The first real tendrils of fear were beginning to curl through her stomach. Her father was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight she had never heard before. "6 months ago, I found something." He pulled out a geological survey map covered in his annotations. "Uranium deposits, significant ones, right here in this valley." Maya knew what uranium was, knew it was valuable and dangerous, and that people fought wars over resources like this. "I reported it through proper channels," James continued. "Sent my findings to the U.S. Geological Survey, to the EPA, to the Department of the Interior." And then strange things started happening. He listed them clinically. Equipment going missing from the cabin, trail cameras destroyed, tire tracks from vehicles that had no business being this far into the backcountry, men in civilian clothes asking questions in town about the crazy scientist who lived in the woods. "3 weeks ago, I saw them," he said. "Professional, military bearing but no uniforms. Watching the cabin from the ridge. I counted 4. Maya felt cold despite the fire's warmth. "What do they want?" "They want me to tell them exactly where the deposits are. They want me to work with them." He paused. "They want me to help them extract it quietly before any environmental regulations can stop them." "And you said no?" "I said no." James closed the case with the rifle and looked at his daughter with an expression that would haunt her for years to come. Mix of pride and sorrow and terrible necessity. "Maya, if men come here asking questions, you do not know anything. You're just a kid spending the summer with her dad. You have never seen any maps or surveys. You do not know anything about uranium. Understand?" She nodded mutely. "If they come when I am here, I will handle it. But if they come and I cannot..." He tapped the map. 1 mile north. "There is a bunker. Your grandfather built it during the Cold War. I have stocked it with everything you would need. Food, water, medical supplies, this rifle, solar chargers, everything. The code to open it is 07-15-2001, your birthday." "Why are you telling me this?" Maya's voice was small, frightened. "Because you are smarter than you know, stronger than you think, and because someone needs to protect this place after I am gone." "You are not going anywhere," Maya said fiercely. James smiled sadly. I hope not, Maya Bear. I really hope not. He used her childhood nickname, the one from when she was small enough to ride on his shoulders, from before divorce and complications and men with guns became part of their reality. They sat in silence for a long time. The fire crackled. Outside in the darkness, the forest continued its eternal processes. Prey running, predators hunting, life consuming life in the endless cycle that needed no human understanding to function. Finally, James spoke again. Tomorrow I will teach you to shoot. Really shoot. And then I want you to make me a promise. Anything. If I tell you to run, you run. You do not argue. You do not try to help. You go to the bunker and you stay there until it is safe. Can you promise me that? Maya wanted to argue, wanted to say she would never leave him, but something in his eyes stopped her. This was not a request. This was a father doing everything he could to protect his daughter from a threat he could see coming, but could not stop. I promise, she whispered. Good girl. He stood and placed the case back in its hidden compartment. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow we have work to do. Maya lay in her narrow bunk that night, listening to the forest sounds she had learned to identify over countless summer nights. The hoot of a barred owl, the rustle of deer moving through underbrush, the distant yip of coyotes claiming territory with their voices. She did not sleep. Some part of her already knew, already understood that childhood ended not with a date or a ceremony, but with the moment you realized the adults who were supposed to protect you were just as frightened and fragile as you were. Tomorrow came with heavy gray skies that turned the forest dim and threatening. James took Maya to a natural clearing half a mile from the cabin. He set up targets at various distances, 50 yards, 100, 200. The rifle was heavy in her hands, heavier than she expected. Her father showed her again how to hold it, how to press the stock firmly against her shoulder to control recoil, how to line up the scope's reticle on the target. Breathe in, breathe out. At the bottom of your exhale, when your body is most still, that is when you squeeze. The first shot surprised her with its violence. The crack of the report echoing off the valley walls, the kick against her shoulder, the sharp smell of gunpowder. She missed the target completely. Good, her father said. You flinched. Everyone flinches the first time. Now try again, and this time do not anticipate the recoil. Let it surprise you. They spent 4 hours in that clearing. By the end, Maya was hitting the 50-yard target consistently, the 100-yard target occasionally. The 200 was still beyond her, but her father said that would come with practice. You have good instincts, he told her as they walked back. You do not rush. That is important. Maya felt a strange pride mixed with unease. She did not want to be good at this, did not want to need this skill. But some deeper part of her understood that wanting and needing were different countries with no shared border. That afternoon, they reviewed the maps again. James made her memorize the routes to each cache, made her recite the coordinates until she could do it without looking, made her prove she understood how to read terrain and navigate by landmarks when GPS failed. He was building something, creating a foundation of knowledge and capability that felt excessive for a 13-year-old girl spending summer vacation with her father. But he knew. Somehow he knew. The men came on the night of July 15th. Maya woke to her father's hand over her mouth. His eyes were wide in the darkness. Urgent. The bunker. Now, go. She could hear voices outside, rough, commanding, the sound of boots on the cabin's wooden steps. Dad, she whispered against his palm, I will buy you time. Remember your promise. He pulled his hand away and she saw he was holding something. Not the rifle, a pistol she had never known he owned. 1 mile north. Code 07-155-2001. Do not come back no matter what you hear. Do you understand me, Maya? Do not come back. The door splintered inward with a crash that seemed to shake the entire cabin. Run! Maya ran. Out the back window she had practiced climbing through 100 times in games that were not games anymore. Into the forest she knew by heart, even in darkness. North towards safety, while behind her, the only home that ever mattered, exploded into violence. She heard shouting, her father's voice raised in defiance, other voices demanding answers about maps and locations and cooperation. Then the first gunshot. Maya stumbled, nearly fell. Every instinct screamed at her to go back, to help, to fight. But she had promised. She ran through trees that tore at her clothes and skin, ran through undergrowth that grabbed at her ankles, ran through darkness so complete she navigated purely by memory and desperation. Behind her, more gunshots, 3, 4, then silence worse than any sound. She found the bunker by touch more than sight, a slight depression in the earth, a steel hatch covered in years of moss and needles. Her hands shaking so badly she could barely work the combination lock. 7/15/2001. The hatch opened with a groan of long unused hinges. Maya dropped into darkness and pulled the hatch closed above her. In the absolute black of the sealed bunker, she fumbled for the light switch her father had described. Found it. Fluorescent tubes flickered to life, revealing a space about 10 feet square. Exactly as he had said, shelves of supplies, water, food, the rifle case, solar panels and batteries, a camping stove, medical kit, everything. On the small table in the center sat an envelope with her name written in her father's careful handwriting. Maya's hands trembled as she opened it. The letter inside was dated 3 weeks earlier. Maya Bear, it began. If you are reading this, then I am gone, and you are alone, and I am sorry. I am so sorry. I tried to protect you from this. Tried to find another way. But some things cannot be stopped, only survived. The men who came are not military, though they move like soldiers. They are mercenaries, contractors, working for someone who wants the uranium deposits I discovered. They want me to give them exact locations, geological data, survey maps. I have refused. I cannot give them this information. The deposits are located beneath critical habitat, wolf denning sites, old-growth forest that has stood for 500 years, headwaters for 3 major river systems. If they extract the uranium, they will destroy everything. I know this seems like just rocks and trees to most people, but you understand, don't you? You have seen the wolf pack. You have tracked the elk herds. You know how everything connects, how removing one piece collapses the whole. Someone needs to protect this place, someone who understands it, someone who loves it enough to sacrifice for it. I wish that someone could be anyone but you. I wish I could have given you a normal childhood, soccer games and school dances and worries about homework. But you are not normal, Maya. You never have been. You see the world differently. You understand connections others miss. You have a gift for reading the land that I have only seen in people who spend lifetimes learning. You are 13 years old, and I am asking you to do something no child should have to do. I am asking you to survive, to hide, to learn, to become the guardian this place needs. There are supplies here for 6 months. By then, you will have learned to extend them indefinitely. You will have learned to truly live in the forest, not just visit it. The rifle is yours now. Use it only when necessary. Use it wisely. Trust the wolves. I know that sounds crazy, but trust them. They know this land better than any human ever could. I love you, Maya. I am proud of you. Whatever you become, whatever you have to do to survive, remember that you are my daughter, and I would not change a single thing about you. Stay alive, stay hidden, stay strong. The land needs a guardian now. You are stronger than you know. Dad. Maya read the letter 3 times before her hands stopped shaking enough to set it down. She sat in the harsh fluorescent light of the bunker her father had prepared for exactly this moment, and she understood with terrible clarity that everything had changed. She was 13 years old, she was alone, and she had just inherited a war she did not know how to fight. The first 72 hours were about pure survival, not dying, not being found, not letting shock and grief shut down the essential processes that kept a body alive. Maya stayed in the bunker that first night, listening to footsteps above her at one point, voices speaking in Russian-accented English. They were searching, systematically, looking for the daughter the scientist must have mentioned under interrogation. She held her breath until they passed, did not move until their voices faded into distance, did not cry until she was certain she was truly alone. When she finally emerged the next morning, the cabin was ash, burned to the foundation with a thoroughness that suggested accelerant in intention, destroying evidence, erasing the scientist who had refused to cooperate. Maya approached carefully, scanning for watchers. The mercenaries were gone, but they would be back. People like that always came back. She found her father's orte 50 yards from the cabin. They had dragged him out, executed him, left him as a message to anyone who might ask questions later. An accident, a tragic fire, a researcher who got careless with a propane lantern. Maya stood over her father's body and felt something fundamental break inside her. Some essential connection to the person she had been 72 hours earlier, when the worst thing in her life was an algebra assignment she had been putting off. That girl was gone. That life was over. She buried him. It took all day with a small folding shovel from the bunker supplies. dug a grave in the forest he loved under Douglas firs that had stood for centuries and would stand for centuries more. She did not say anything over the grave, could not find words that meant anything. Instead, she placed his field notebook on his chest before covering him with earth. All his observations and data and careful documentation of the systems he had dedicated his life to understanding. Then she marked the site with a cairn of stones that looked natural enough to escape notice, but distinctive enough that she would always be able to find it. She was 13 years old and she had just buried her father, and she had never felt so alone in her entire life. The second day was about inventory, taking stock of what she had, making it last. The bunker contained enough freeze-dried food for 6 months if she rationed carefully. Water purification tablets, first aid supplies, clothing in various sizes her father must have collected over years, the rifle with 200 rounds of ammunition, solar panels and battery banks to keep electronics charged, a satellite phone with a note that said emergency only. They can track this. Her father's research notes, detailed maps, USB drives containing decades of data, and books, dozens of survival manuals, field guides, wilderness medicine, edible plants, animal tracking, as if he had been building a library specifically designed to transform a child into something capable of living indefinitely in the wilderness. Maya read through the night, absorbing information with the desperate focus of someone who understood that knowledge was now the only thing standing between her and death. By the third day, she knew she could not stay in the bunker, could not hide like a rabbit waiting for hunters to give up and leave. They would not leave. Not with millions of dollars in uranium at stake. She needed to move, to establish multiple positions, to learn the land so completely that she could disappear into it. She needed to become invisible. That morning, she packed a ruck from the bunker supplies, took the rifle, took her father's maps, took everything she would need to survive for weeks without returning. Before she left, she found something carved into the bunker's wooden doorframe, recent enough that the wood was still light where it had been cut. Her father's handwriting. One last message. Remember the winter cache. Trust the wolves. Maya stared at those words for a long time. The winter cache. He had mentioned it, marked it on the maps. 8 miles deeper into the wilderness. A secondary position even more remote than this one. And the wolves. The pack he had been studying for 3 years. The alpha female with the distinctive tracks. What did he mean by trust them? She shouldered her pack and started walking north. Behind her, the bunker disappeared into the forest. One more secret swallowed by 10,000 square miles of wilderness. Ahead lay a future she could not imagine. An education no school could provide. A transformation that would take a frightened 13-year-old girl and forge her into something the mountains themselves would learn to fear. But that transformation would take time, take pain, take choices that would cost her pieces of herself she could never get back. For now, she was just a child lost in the woods, alone and afraid and trying desperately to remember everything her father had taught her about survival. The first lesson came that afternoon when she heard helicopters. They were searching, systematic grid pattern, flying low enough that she could see men with binoculars scanning the forest canopy. Maya froze. Every instinct screamed run, but her father's voice echoed in memory. Movement attracts eyes. Stillness saves lives. She pressed herself against a massive cedar trunk, made herself small, made herself part of the landscape. The helicopter passed directly overhead. So close she could feel rotor wash pulling at her clothes. So close she could see the faces of the men inside. They did not see her. The helicopter moved on, continued its search pattern toward the west. Maya waited 10 full minutes before moving, breathing slowly, listening to her heartbeat gradually slow from panic back to something approaching normal. She had just survived her first real test, had learned the first real lesson of what it meant to be prey. Stay still, stay hidden, stay alive. Over the next weeks, that lesson would be tested again and again. She would learn to move only at dawn and dusk when shadows made detection harder, to avoid ridgelines where her silhouette could be spotted from a distance, to use stream beds and gullies for travel instead of obvious game trails. She would learn which plants were edible and which would kill her, which water sources were safe and which carried parasites, how to build fires that produced minimal smoke, and how to sleep in positions that let her wake instantly at any sound. She would learn that survival was not one big dramatic test, but rather 1,000 small decisions made correctly over and over until they became instinct. But all of that was still ahead of her on that third day as she made her way deeper into the Cascade wilderness. Still ahead were the mistakes that would nearly kill her. The infections and injuries and moments of despair when giving up seemed easier than continuing. Still ahead was the morning she would find the wolf pack and understand what her father meant. Still ahead was the first time she would look another human being down a rifle scope and make a choice that would change her forever. All of that was coming, inevitable as winter, necessary as breathing. But on July 18th, 2019, Maya Reeves was still just a 13-year-old girl carrying her father's rifle through a forest that seemed determined to swallow her whole. She walked until darkness made further travel dangerous, made camp in a hollow beneath a fallen cedar, ate a protein bar from her pack, drank water she had purified from a creek. Above her, the stars emerged one by one through breaks in the canopy, the same stars her father had taught her to navigate by during camping trips that now seemed to belong to someone else's life. Maya pulled out the letter. Read it again by flashlight. Let the tears come in silence. Tomorrow she would be strong. Tomorrow she would begin learning what it took to survive alone in the wilderness. Tomorrow she would start becoming whatever she needed to be. But tonight she was still allowed to be a child, still allowed to grieve, still allowed to be afraid. Tomorrow could wait. The forest did not care about her pain, did not care about her father or uranium deposits or mercenaries with guns. The forest simply was, continuing its processes, growing and dying and growing again in cycles that had been repeating since long before humans learned to walk upright. Maya fell asleep to the sound of the wind in the trees, the same sound her father had fallen asleep to 3 nights earlier, the same sound that would sing over his grave for as long as the forest stood. She dreamed of wolves running through moonlight, of her father's voice teaching her one last lesson, of crosshairs settling on distant targets with absolute clarity. She dreamed of becoming someone she could not yet imagine. And deep in the wilderness, where human eyes could not reach, the alpha female wolf raised her head, scenting the wind, aware of the small human presence now moving through her territory. Aware and watching, waiting to see what this newcomer would become. The forest had chosen its guardian. Now it would test her, would push her to breaking and beyond, would teach her lessons written in blood and hunger and solitude, would transform her into exactly what the land needed. One day at a time, one choice at a time, one shot at a time, the education had begun. The winter cache sat exactly where her father's maps indicated, 8 miles deeper into the Cascade wilderness, where the mountains grew steeper and the trees pressed so close together that snow never fully melted even in summer. Maya found it on her 7th day alone, guided by landmarks her father had described in notes she now understood were meant specifically for this moment. A lightning-struck cedar, a creek that split around a moss-covered boulder, 3 hemlock trees growing from a single root system like siblings refusing to separate. The cache itself was invisible until you knew where to look. A natural cave beneath a granite overhang, entrance hidden by ferns and deadfall arranged with such care that it looked completely untouched by human hands. Inside, Maya found supplies that made the bunker look like a weekend camping trip. Industrial shelving held freeze-dried meals enough for 2 years. Water filtration systems, medical supplies that would stock a small clinic, batteries, solar panels, communication equipment, cold weather gear in sizes ranging from child to adult, as if her father had been preparing for her growth over multiple years, as if he had known this day would come long before it actually did. On a small wooden table sat another envelope with her name. Maya's hands no longer trembled when she opened these letters. 7 days in the wilderness had already begun teaching her that survival required steady hands and steadier nerves. Shaking accomplished nothing except wasted energy. Maya Bear, this letter began. If you found this place, then you survived the first week. I am proud of you. I knew you would make it, but I am still proud. By now you have learned the first lessons. How to move quietly, how to stay hidden, how to ration supplies and purify water and make fire without smoke. These are the basics. What comes next is harder. You are going to be alone for a long time. Months, maybe years. The men who came for me will not stop looking. They have invested too much, lost too much face. They will search until they are certain you do not exist, or until they decide you are not a threat. You cannot be found. Not yet, not until you are ready. This cache has everything you need to survive multiple winters. Use it as a base. Learn the surrounding territory until you know it better than you know your own heartbeat. Learn which plants bloom when, which animals migrate where. Learn the weather patterns and the safe routes and the places where predators hunt. Learn to read the forest the way I taught you to read tracks. Every detail matters. Every small thing connects to every other small thing. There is something else you need to know. The uranium deposits I discovered are not just valuable. They are located beneath the primary denning site for the wolf pack I have been studying. If the mercenaries extract the uranium, they will destroy habitat that has sustained wolves in this region for thousands of years. The pack's alpha female, the one whose tracks you learn to identify, has a den site directly above the largest deposit. She has pups this year, 4 of them. I watched them playing outside the den 3 weeks before everything fell apart. I am telling you this because you need to understand what you are protecting. Not just rocks and trees, not just abstract concepts like ecosystem or biodiversity. Actual lives, actual families trying to survive in a world that keeps shrinking around them. I do not know what you will become out here, Maya. I do not know how the wilderness will change you. But I know you have always had a gift for seeing connections others miss, for understanding that everything matters. Trust that gift, trust yourself, and trust the wolves. I know how that sounds, but I have watched that pack for 3 years. They are more aware than most people realize, smarter, more adaptable. If you respect them, they will respect you. If you protect their territory, they might just protect you in return. Stay alive, stay learning, stay strong. I love you, Dad. Maya read the letter twice, then carefully folded it and placed it in the waterproof pouch where she kept the first letter, building a collection of messages from a ghost. Words from a dead man teaching her how to live. She spent 3 days at the winter cache, organizing supplies and studying her father's maps until she could navigate the entire region in her mind. Topographical features, elevation changes, water sources, game trails, every detail committed to memory. On the 4th day, she went looking for the wolves. Tracking them was easier than she expected. Her father's notes contained 3 years of observations, movement patterns, territory boundaries, preferred hunting grounds. The pack was creatures of habit within their domain, following routes established over generations. Maya found their tracks along a ridgeline 2 miles north of the cache, fresh prints in mud, still soft from morning rain. 4 adults and in what looked like juvenile tracks, the pups her father had mentioned, now several months old and learning to hunt. She followed the trail for hours, moving slowly and staying downwind, not trying to catch up, just observing, learning their rhythm. As the sun angled toward afternoon, she heard them, not howling. That came at night. This was different. Yips and playful growls, the sounds of young wolves testing their strength against each other, while adults watched with the patient attention of parents everywhere. Maya crept to the edge of a clearing and froze. The pack was there. All of them. 4 adults and 4 adolescents, nearly full-grown now, but still moving with the clumsy enthusiasm of youth. They were playing, tumbling over each other in mock combat that taught real skills. And watching over them, lying on a sun-warmed boulder with the casual authority of absolute dominance, was the alpha female. She was larger than Maya expected. Easily 90 pounds of muscle and bone and survival instinct honed over years of keeping a pack alive in unforgiving territory. Her coat was gray and silver with darker guard hairs along her spine. Her eyes were amber and intelligent and absolutely aware. Those eyes found Maya within seconds of her arrival at the clearing's edge. The alpha's head came up. Not aggressive, not alarmed, simply aware, acknowledging the presence of another predator in her territory. Maya held perfectly still, barely breathing. Every nature documentary she had ever watched said wolves avoided humans, said they were shy and secretive and wanted nothing to do with people. But this wolf was not avoiding. She was evaluating. The moment stretched, seconds that felt like hours. The alpha female staring at the 13-year-old girl crouching in the underbrush. The girl staring back, wondering if she was about to die in the most spectacular act of stupidity possible. Then the wolf yawned, deliberately, showing teeth that could crush bone, making a point. This is my territory. You are tolerated. Do not make me regret that tolerance. She laid her head back down, closed her eyes, went back to basking in the sun while her pack played around her. Maya stayed frozen for another 10 minutes before slowly backing away, not turning her back, not showing fear, but not showing challenge either. Respectful retreat. She made it 50 yards before her legs started shaking so badly she had to sit down. The alpha had let her live, had acknowledged her presence and decided she was not a threat worth the energy of elimination. Trust the wolves, her father had written. Maya was beginning to understand what he meant. Over the next week, she returned to watch the pack, learning their patterns, their hierarchy, their hunting strategies. She watched from concealment as they brought down a deer, working together with coordination that would make any military unit envious. Watch them play and fight and raise their young. Watch the alpha female teach the adolescents which humans to avoid and which to ignore through patient example. Maya began to understand that her father had been right about more than just survival techniques. The wolves were aware, sophisticated, operating with a level of intelligence that most people never bothered to notice because it did not look like human intelligence. They knew their territory better than any map, knew weather patterns days in advance by reading signs invisible to human senses, knew which prey was sick and which was healthy, knew where to find water during drought and shelter during storms. They were the true masters of this wilderness. Maya was just a student trying to learn their language. By the end of her first month alone, Maya had settled into a rhythm. She moved between the winter cache and two other positions she established, never staying in one place more than 3 days. Made herself unpredictable, made herself invisible. She saw the mercenaries twice, once from a ridge as they searched the valley floor with systematic precision, once when she stumbled onto one of their camps while scouting a new route. Both times she froze. Both times she waited until they moved on. Both times she survived through stillness and patience. She was learning the first real lesson of asymmetric warfare, even if she did not have words for it yet. The weaker force does not engage directly. The weaker force uses terrain and patience and intimate knowledge to make the stronger force waste resources. Her father had taught her ecology. The forest was teaching her strategy. The first winter came hard and early that year. Snow in October, temperatures dropping to 10 below zero by November. Maya had prepared as well as a 13-year-old could, stocking her positions with firewood and supplies. But preparation was different from endurance. She nearly died twice that winter. Once from infection, when a simple cut on her hand turned red and swollen and hot to the touch. She treated it with antibiotics from the medical supplies, not knowing if she was using the right ones or the right dosage. Spent 3 days in fever dreams, where her father's voice mixed with wolf howls and the mercenaries from her nightmares. She woke on the 4th day to find the infection draining, the fever broken, her hand painful but healing. Something had been placed near her sleeping bag during the fever. A half-eaten rabbit carcass. Fresh kill. Maya stared at it for a long time before understanding clicked into place. The wolf pack's territory included this area. She had been too sick to hunt, to feed herself. Something had left her food. The second near-death came from cold. A storm that blew in with winds strong enough to flatten her shelter and temperatures that turned exposed skin white with frostbite in minutes. Maya huddled in her sleeping bag for 36 hours, while the world outside tried to kill her with indifference. When the storm finally passed, she emerged to find snow piled so deep that navigation was nearly impossible. She floundered through chest-high drifts, exhausted and hypothermic, trying to reach the winter cache where she had fuel for a real fire. She did not make it. Collapsed half a mile from safety, body shutting down, mind fuzzing into the dangerous warmth that came right before freezing to death. She woke hours later in a snow cave she did not remember digging. Body heat trapped by snow walls, alive. Outside the cave entrance, barely visible in the fading light, were canine tracks, large ones, leading away into the forest. Maya was 14 years old when she killed her first human being. It happened in late spring, almost a year after her father's death. A year spent learning to survive, to hunt, to move through the wilderness like something born to it. She had been tracking deer when she heard the snowmobile, out of place in May when most of the snow had melted, moving fast through terrain that should have been impassable. Maya followed the sound, curiosity overcoming caution. Found a man in civilian clothes with a rifle slung over his shoulder and equipment that looked wrong for hunting. Too professional, too expensive. He was working near the creek that fed the valley's primary watershed, setting up some kind of device, metal cylinder with tubes and electronics. Maya watched from concealment as he connected wires, opened a container of powder that made her eyes water even from 50 yards away, poured it into the creek with methodical precision. Poison. The realization hit her like a physical blow. He was poisoning the water, the same water the wolf pack drank from, The same water that fed into the streams where salmon spawned. The same water that supported the entire ecosystem her father had dedicated his life to protecting. Maya's hands found her rifle without conscious thought. The Remington 700 her father had given her, that she had been practicing with for months now, learning distance and wind in the terrible mathematics of ballistics. The man was 180 yards away. Uphill angle, light wind from the east. Every lesson her father had taught her crystallized into absolute clarity. Breathing, heart rate, the space between heartbeats where the body was most still. The crosshairs settled on center mass. The man bent over his poison, completely unaware he was being watched. Completely unaware he had maybe 30 seconds left to live. Maya's finger moved to the trigger, pressure building, almost enough to break the shot. Then she stopped, thinking. Killing him would not undo the poison already in the water, would not stop whatever organization had sent him, would just create a body that would bring more searchers, more questions. She needed to be smarter than angry. Maya adjusted her aim, no longer targeting the man, targeting the poison container, the electronics, the snowmobile's engine block. 3 shots in as many seconds, each one precise, each one destroying equipment worth thousands of dollars. The man dove for cover, shouting into a radio, panicked, terrified by an attack from an invisible enemy. Maya was already moving, relocating, disappearing into terrain she knew better than her own reflection. She heard helicopters an hour later, heard men shouting coordinates and searching with an urgency that confirmed what she had suspected. This was not some isolated incident. This was part of a larger operation. They wanted the land cleared, wanted the ecosystem damaged beyond recovery so environmental regulations would not apply, wanted to make extraction easier by killing everything that made the wilderness worth protecting. Maya felt something harden inside her that day, some last piece of childhood calcifying into resolve. She was not just surviving anymore. She was fighting back. Over the next year, she learned to wage a war of attrition against an enemy with superior numbers and equipment, learned that she did not need to win battles. She just needed to make occupation too expensive to maintain. Trail cameras disappeared. Equipment malfunctioned. Supplies went missing. Routes the mercenaries used suddenly became impassable due to fallen trees or washed-out trails that had been stable for years. Nothing that could be definitively traced to sabotage. Nothing that looked like anything except bad luck in the wilderness reclaiming territory humans should never have entered. But the mercenaries knew. They started calling the area the dead zone, started refusing assignments that required spending more than a day in the deep forest, started losing people to accidents and disappearances that their commanders could not explain. Maya was 15 when she killed for the first time. Actually killed, not just shot equipment or frightened people away. It was not a mercenary. It was a poacher who had set up an operation trapping and killing wolves for their pelts. Illegal but profitable in certain markets. He had killed 2 members of the pack Maya had been watching for over a year. She found him checking his traps, found the pelts, found evidence of cruelty that made her stomach turn. The shot was 240 yards. Clean. The man dropped without a sound. Maya buried him deep in a gully that would wash out completely during spring runoff. Destroyed his camp. Released the wolf he had caught alive in one of his traps, injured but savable. That night, she sat in her shelter and tried to feel something about taking a human life. Tried to find guilt or horror or regret. Found only cold calculation. One threat eliminated, the pack safer, the ecosystem more balanced. She wrote about it in the journal she had started keeping. Clinical observations like her father's research notes. Subject terminated. Threat to population neutralized. Ecosystem impact positive. Turning murder into data. Turning killing into conservation. She was becoming something her father would not recognize. Something the wilderness required. Something that existed in the space between human and animal, civilized and feral, protector and predator. The nightmares came later. Dreams where her father watched her with disappointment. Dreams where her mother screamed at what her daughter had become. Dreams where she looked in a mirror and saw a stranger wearing her face. But daylight always brought the same clarity. She was alive. The pack was alive. The forest still stood. The uranium still sat beneath the earth, unextracted and safe. The cost was just pieces of herself she would never get back. By 16, Maya Reeves had become a ghost story. The mercenaries who still worked the region spoke in whispers about the dead zone, about equipment that failed at critical moments, about the feeling of being watched by something that understood the forest in ways they never could. Some said it was the ghost of the scientist they had killed, come back to haunt the people who murdered him. Some said it was one of the wolves, grown smart and vengeful enough to wage war on humans. Some said it was a girl, a child who had survived somehow and learned to live wild. But that version was dismissed as ridiculous. No kid could survive 3 years alone in the Cascades. No teenager could operate with the precision they had observed. Maya knew all this because she had started intercepting their communications, had learned to use the radio equipment from the winter cache, had spent months listening to their chatter and learning their patterns and understanding how they thought. Knowledge was ammunition. Every piece of information she gathered made her more effective, made her more dangerous. She was no longer the frightened 13-year-old running through the dark. She was something new, something the wilderness had shaped through 3 years of survival and solitude and choices that carved away everything soft. She could track prey for days without being detected, could move through terrain that would challenge experienced hunters, could shoot with precision that would shame military snipers. She could read weather days in advance, could find food and water in conditions that would starve most people, could treat injuries that would cripple anyone without her accumulated knowledge. She could survive alone indefinitely in an environment designed to kill solitary humans. But the cost was becoming clear. 3 years without human conversation except for intercepted radio chatter. 3 years of talking only to herself and occasionally to the wolves who had become strange companions in her isolation. 3 years of becoming something other than human in ways she was only beginning to understand. She caught her reflection in a stream one day and barely recognized herself. The soft girl from her 13th summer was gone completely. In her place was someone lean and hard and feral, eyes that tracked movement with predator focus, posture that was always ready to run or fight. She looked like something raised by wolves because in a very real way she had been. The pack had become her reference point for normal. Their patterns shaped her days. Their territory defined her world. Their acceptance of her presence was the closest thing she had to family. The alpha female was old now, graying around the muzzle, moving with the careful precision of age and accumulated injuries, but still dominant, still teaching the younger generations how to survive. Maya watched from her usual observation point as the alpha led a hunt, coordinating the pack with looks and body language. No wasted energy, no unnecessary risk. Perfect efficiency born from years of experience. She was a master of her environment. She belonged here in a way no human ever could. Maya wondered if she was watching her future, growing old in the wilderness, alone except for wolves, protecting territory until age or injury or simple bad luck finally caught up with her. It was not the future any 16-year-old should be contemplating, but then nothing about her life had been normal since the night the mercenaries came. Summer was ending when Maya intercepted the transmission that would change everything. She was monitoring the frequencies she had identified as belonging to the mercenary operations. Routine surveillance. They had been quiet for months now, scaling back operations in the dead zone, learning that some territories were too expensive to hold. But this transmission was different. Different encryption, different call signs, military precision instead of contractor casualness. American forces, Army Rangers, coming into the region on what sounded like a reconnaissance mission. Maya listened with growing concern as they coordinated insertion points and established communications protocols. Professional, competent, dangerous in completely different ways than the mercenaries. She had been avoiding the mercenaries successfully for 3 years because they were predictable, motivated by money, unwilling to take risks that threatened profit margins. But soldiers were different. Soldiers followed orders. Soldiers had training that might actually make them capable of finding her if they tried. Maya spent 2 days considering her options. She could relocate deeper into the wilderness, could avoid them entirely, could maintain her ghost status and hope they left quickly. Or she could watch them, learn about them, understand what they were doing here. Knowledge was ammunition, always. She made her decision. She would observe, would stay hidden, would gather intelligence and only engage if absolutely necessary. It was a good plan. Solid tactical thinking developed over 3 years of successfully avoiding detection. She had no way of knowing that this decision would finally bring her back into contact with her own species after 3 years of isolation. Had no way of knowing that the Rangers coming into her territory would be pinned down and desperate within 48 hours of arrival. had no way of knowing that she would face a choice between maintaining her invisibility and using everything her father had taught her to save the lives of men she had never met. The Rangers were coming. The war Maya had been fighting alone was about to expand in ways she could not anticipate. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight she sat in her shelter and cleaned her rifle with the automatic precision of long practice, checking every component, ensuring perfect function. The Remington 700 had become an extension of herself over 3 years. She knew its quirks and capabilities better than most people knew their own cars, knew exactly how it would perform at any distance under any condition. 200 rounds remaining from the original supply. She had been careful, had made every shot count, had learned that ammunition was a resource too precious to waste. Tomorrow she would begin the surveillance on the Rangers, would learn their patterns, would assess if they were threat or opportunity or something in between. Tonight she was still the ghost of Blackpine, still the guardian her father had asked her to become, still 16 years old and completely alone, except for the wolves who hunted in the darkness beyond her shelter. She fell asleep to the sound of them howling, territory claims echoing across the valley, voices older than civilization announcing that this land belonged to those who had always lived here. Maya understood that language now, understood that she was part of that song whether she had been born to it or not. The wilderness had claimed her, had shaped her, had made her into exactly what it needed. Whatever came next, she would face it as what she had become. Not the girl who ran through the forest 3 years ago, not the child her mother remembered. Something new, something forged in isolation and survival and choices that could never be undone. The guardian of Blackpine, the ghost in the forest, the girl who learned to speak wolf and forgot how to be human. Tomorrow the Rangers would enter her territory. Tomorrow the game would change. But tonight the forest was quiet except for distant howls and the whisper of wind through ancient trees. Tonight Maya Reeves was exactly where she belonged. Home, Captain Nathan Cross had been a hunter before he became a soldier, had learned to track deer through Pennsylvania hardwoods with his grandfather starting at age 8, had learned patience in wind direction and the way sunlight filtered through leaves in different seasons, had learned that the forest revealed its secrets only to those willing to wait. That was 15 years ago, before Ranger School, before deployments that taught him different kinds of hunting in different kinds of terrain, before he learned that the skills his grandfather taught him for bringing home venison translated with terrible efficiency to bringing home men. Now he stood on a ridge in the Cascade Mountains of Washington State, looking down at a valley that made something deep in his memory stir with recognition. He had been here before, years ago, before the Army, a hunting trip with his grandfather during a cross-country journey the old man had insisted on before cancer took him. They had stopped here for 3 days, had met a researcher and his young daughter who were studying wolves. Cross remembered the girl, maybe 7 years old, quiet and serious with eyes that watched everything. Her father had invited them for coffee, had shown them his research, had talked about ecosystem balance with the passionate intensity of someone who had found their life's purpose. What was his name? Reeves, Dr. James Reeves, and the girl was Maya. Cross wondered what had happened to them, whether they were still out here studying wolves, whether they had any idea that their research area had become a hot zone for foreign mercenary activity. Sergeant Maria Santos moved up beside him, scanning the valley through binoculars. 5'6" of concentrated competence, Santos had been Cross's second in command for 3 years, had saved his life twice and he had saved hers once, and that kind of math built trust you could not fake. Beautiful country, she said. Also perfect ambush terrain. Cross nodded. The valley was a tactical nightmare. Dense forest, limited sight lines, countless concealed positions. If someone wanted to avoid detection here, they could stay hidden indefinitely. What's our intel say about the mercenary presence? Santos consulted her tablet. Russian contractors, approximately 20 to 30 personnel, operating under cover of a mining survey company, but satellite imagery shows activity inconsistent with legitimate survey work. They are looking for something specific. Cross knew what they were looking for even if the briefing had not made it explicit. Uranium. The region had been flagged years ago for potential deposits, but environmental regulations had prevented exploration. Now someone was trying to change that equation through methods that did not involve paperwork and permits. Rules of engagement? Observe and report, Santos said. We are not here to engage. Just gather intelligence on their operations and report back to command. Cross's team consisted of 8 rangers, all veterans, all handpicked for their fieldcraft and reliability. They had inserted via helicopter 30 miles north and had been moving south for 2 days, staying off trails and avoiding any sign of mercenary patrols. Professional, careful. Exactly the kind of operation Cross had run dozens of times before. Except something felt wrong. That hunter's instinct his grandfather had trained into him was whispering warnings he could not articulate. The forest felt too quiet, too aware, like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. "Move out," Cross ordered. Standard tactical spacing, eyes open. They descended into the valley as afternoon shadows began stretching across the forest floor. Cross took point with Santos behind him, and the rest of the team spread out in a loose formation that balanced security with the need to stay within visual contact. The terrain was difficult. Fallen logs and deadfall made straight-line movement impossible. Thick undergrowth grabbed at equipment. Moss-covered rocks offered treacherous footing. This was old-growth forest that had never been logged, never been tamed, never been made convenient for human passage. It was beautiful and hostile in equal measure. They made 3 miles before Cross called a halt. The team established a defensive perimeter while Santos set up their satellite communication array. Cross moved to the edge of their position and glassed the surrounding terrain. Movement caught his eye, maybe 400 yards out, too far for detail but distinct enough to identify as human. "Contact," he said quietly into his radio. "Single individual, northeast, 400 meters." The team went instantly alert, weapons ready but not aimed, observing. Through his scope, Cross watched a man in civilian clothes moving through the forest with the careful precision of someone who knew they were in dangerous territory. Not a hiker, not a researcher. This was a mercenary doing exactly what Cross's team was doing. Reconnaissance. "Do we engage?" Santos asked. "Negative. We observe." Cross kept his scope on the target. "Let's see where he goes." They watched for 20 minutes as the mercenary worked his way along a game trail, stopping occasionally to mark waypoints on a GPS unit, mapping routes, establishing patterns. Then he stopped, stood perfectly still, looking at something Cross could not see from his angle. The mercenary raised his radio and said something in Russian. His tone was urgent, questioning. Cross did not speak Russian, but he understood the body language. The man had found something, something unexpected. Before Cross could react, the mercenary's radio squawked a response and he started moving quickly back the way he had come. Not running, but moving with purpose. "They know we are here," Santos said. "Maybe." Cross lowered his scope. "Or they found something else. Either way, we need to relocate before they bring friends." The team packed up efficiently and started moving west, away from the mercenary's position. Cross led them through a creek bed to break any tracking attempts, then up a steep slope that would give them high ground and better visibility. They were halfway up when the first shot rang out, not aimed at them. The sound came from the east, a single rifle crack that echoed through the valley with the distinct signature of a high-powered weapon. Cross froze, hand up. The team stopped instantly. Another shot, same location, same weapon. "That is not one of ours," Santos said. "Not theirs either," Cross replied. "Wrong sound. That is a hunting rifle. Bolt action." A third shot, then silence. Cross made a decision. "Santos, take the team and establish observation position on that ridge. I am going to check this out." "Sir, that is not protocol." Cross looked at his sergeant. "I know this area. I have been here before. Something is wrong and I need to see what." Santos did not like it, but she nodded. 30 minutes. Then I am coming after you." Cross moved alone through the forest, using skills his grandfather had taught him and the army had refined. He moved toward the sound of the shots, keeping to cover, scanning constantly for threats. He found the first body 10 minutes later. Mercenary, headshot, dead before he hit the ground. The kill was maybe 20 minutes old based on blood pattern and body temperature. Cross scanned the surrounding terrain. The shot had come from elevated position, maybe 200 yards based on angle. Professional work. He found the second body 50 yards from the first. Another mercenary, another headshot, another perfect kill. Someone was hunting the hunters. Cross worked the angles in his head. 2 targets, 2 shots, 2 kills. Whoever was doing this was not spraying and praying. This was precision work, military-grade marksmanship. But who? American forces would not be operating in this area without his knowledge. The mercenaries would not be killing their own people. That left someone else, someone independent. Cross found the third kill site and stopped cold. This mercenary had been shot through the radio he was carrying. The bullet had destroyed the communication equipment and killed the man in the same shot. That was not luck. That was someone making a statement. I see you, I know what you are doing, and I can kill you whenever I want. Cross keyed his radio. Santos, we have a situation. Unknown shooter in the area. 3 mercenary KIA, professional kills. Advise extreme caution. Copy that. Santos's voice was tight. Should we extract? Negative. Maintain observation. I am tracking the shooter. Cross knew he should pull back. Should follow his own rules of engagement. Should report and let command make decisions about how to handle an unknown armed presence. But that hunter's instinct was screaming now. He knew this forest, knew this area, and somewhere in his memory was a piece of information trying to surface. Something about this place, about the researcher and his daughter, about wolves. He followed the shooter's trail, or tried to. The tracks were minimal. Whoever this was moved with a lightness that suggested either extensive fieldcraft training or intimate knowledge of the terrain, probably both. The trail led upslope through terrain that got progressively more difficult. Cross pushed through undergrowth and over deadfall, breathing hard now. Out of shape for this kind of movement after too many months behind desks. He crested a ridge and found himself looking down at a small clearing. Natural amphitheater formed by rock outcroppings and old-growth cedars. In the center of the clearing, sitting on a fallen log like she had been waiting for him, was a girl. Cross froze, hand moving automatically to his sidearm before his brain caught up with what he was seeing. She was young, maybe 16 or 17, dressed in worn outdoor clothing that had been patched and repaired countless times. Dark hair tied back, lean to the point of gaunt. Face that would have been pretty if it was not so hard. So ancient in ways that had nothing to do with age. And in her hands, held with casual competence, was a Remington 700 rifle that looked like it had seen heavy use. The girl made no threatening movement, just sat there watching him with eyes that tracked like a predator evaluating prey. Captain Nathan Cross, she said. Her voice was rough, unused to speaking. Pennsylvania originally, now based out of Fort Benning. Married once, divorced, no children. Led a team into this valley 2 days ago on reconnaissance orders. Cross felt ice slide down his spine. How do you know that? I listen to radio traffic. I learn things. She paused. You were here before. 7 years ago. You and your grandfather. You met my father, Dr. James Reeves. Recognition hit Cross like a physical blow. Maya. You are Maya Reeves. The girl who had been 7 years old and excited about wolf tracks. Who had shown him her field notebook filled with careful drawings and observations. Who had been so proud when his grandfather complimented her tracking skills. What happened to your father? Cross asked, though part of him already knew the answer. They killed him. Maya's voice was flat, empty of emotion. 3 years ago, mercenaries working for someone who wants the uranium deposits my father discovered. They killed him and burned our cabin, and I have been here ever since. Cross stared at her. 3 years. She had survived in this wilderness for 3 years. Alone, starting at age 13. Those kills downslope. That was you. They were poisoning the watershed, trying to damage the ecosystem enough that environmental protections would not apply. I stopped them, by killing them, by protecting what my father died to protect. Maya stood. The rifle remained pointed at the ground, but Cross had no doubt she could bring it to bear faster than he could draw his pistol. You and your team are not a threat. You are not poisoning water or burning forest or trying to extract uranium. So I will not kill you. The clinical way she said it made Cross's blood run cold. This was not a scared teenager. This was someone who had crossed lines most adults never approached. Someone who had been shaped by 3 years of survival into something barely recognizable as the child he remembered. Maya, he kept his voice calm. We can help you, get you out of here, get you back to civilization. This is civilization. Maya gestured at the forest around them. Real civilization. Not the kind that poisons watersheds and destroys habitat for profit. This is where I belong now. You are 16 years old. I am a guardian. My age does not matter. Your mother, Cross tried. She must be worried sick. My mother thinks I am dead. Better that than knowing what I became. And what is that? Maya looked at him with eyes that had seen too much, had done too much, what the wilderness required, what my father prepared me to be. Cross made a decision. He keyed his radio. Santos, stand down. No threat. Repeat, no threat. Copy. Santos responded. You okay, sir? I am fine. Maintain observation position. Will report shortly. He looked back at Maya. Your father. Where is he buried? 1 mile north, under 3 hemlocks growing from shared roots. I visit every week. The detail hit Cross harder than expected. She was still a daughter, still honored her father even while becoming something he might not recognize. The mercenaries, how many have you killed? Maya was quiet for a long moment. 14, plus 7 who died from accidents I arranged. Falling trees, contaminated water. Getting lost in terrain I made sure they could not navigate. Cross felt sick. 21 deaths, caused by a teenager who should have been worrying about homework and prom dates. But he also understood that survival sometimes required terrible choices. Understood that this girl had been forced into a war she never asked for and had done what was necessary to stay alive. My team, he said, we are here to observe the mercenary operations. Gather intelligence. We are not here to harm this place. I know, I have been watching you for 2 days. You move carefully. Respect the terrain. Do not damage unnecessarily. She paused. My father would have approved. Help us, Cross said. You know this area better than anyone. Know the mercenary patterns. Help us complete our mission and maybe we can find a way to shut down their operation permanently. Maya studied him for a long moment. What are you really offering? Information sharing. You tell us what you know about mercenary positions and operations. We report back to command with enough evidence to bring in official response. No more lone guardian fighting alone. Actual military intervention. And me? We pretend we never saw you. You stay your ghost. Your choice. Maya considered this. Cross could see her processing, calculating. This was someone who thought tactically now, who weighed risk and benefit with cold precision. Finally, she nodded. I will share what I know. But understand something, Captain. This is my territory. These are my rules. You respect the land or you leave. Clear. Clear. Maya pulled a hand-drawn map from her jacket, waterproof paper covered in detailed notations. She spread it on the ground between them. This is the mercenary main camp. Here, 23 personnel as of 3 days ago. They rotate patrols every 6 hours. These are their established routes. She traced lines with her finger. These are areas they avoid because they think they are haunted or cursed or something. Why do they think that? Because I made them think it. Noises in the night, equipment that disappears, men who go missing. Psychological warfare is cheaper than bullets. Cross studied the map. This is incredible intelligence, better than anything we could have gathered in weeks. I have had 3 years to observe them. Maya's tone was matter of fact. I know their shift changes, their weak points, their supply routes. I know which ones are scared and which ones are professional. I know everything. Why did you not report this? To authorities or military or someone? Because reporting means exposure, means questions about how a teenager survived alone, means losing my ability to operate. She looked at him directly. I am more effective as a ghost than I would be as a witness. Cross could not argue with the logic, however brutal, however cold. She was right. They spent the next hour going over details. Maya's information was comprehensive and precise. Patrol patterns, communication schedules, equipment inventories, weaknesses in security, everything a tactical team would need to plan an operation. Cross recorded it all, took photos of her maps, asked questions she answered with the dry precision of someone briefing a superior officer. This was not a scared kid. This was an intelligence asset who happened to be 16 years old. Your team is in danger, Maya said suddenly. The mercenaries are planning a sweep of this sector. Tomorrow at dawn, they know American forces are here. They are going to try to pin you down and either capture or kill you. How do you know this? I told you, I listened to their communications. I speak Russian. My father taught me. Useful skill when studying international wildlife research. Cross felt the situation shifting. His team was about to walk into an ambush. They needed to extract or relocate immediately. We need to move. Now. No. Maya shook her head. If you run, they will know you have intelligence about their plans. Better to let them think you are unaware. Let them set their trap. And then I spring it first. Cross stared at her. You are talking about engaging a force of 20+ mercenaries. Alone. I have done it before. She said it like discussing the weather. They hunt in my territory. They do not know the land. They do not understand how to move here. I have every advantage that matters. This is insane. This is asymmetric warfare. David versus Goliath. The weaker force uses knowledge and terrain to defeat superior numbers. Basic tactical doctrine. She was right. Cross knew she was right. But the idea of allowing a 16-year-old to fight his battles made everything in him rebel. Let me coordinate with my team. We can support your operation. Combined arms approach. No, Maya was firm. You stay back. Observe if you want. But do not interfere. The mercenaries think there is only one threat. A ghost. Some kind of curse on the land. The moment they see American military engaging, the whole dynamic changes. Cross wanted to argue, wanted to pull rank and authority and all the reasons this was wrong. But he looked at her eyes and saw someone who had been fighting this war alone for 3 years. Someone who had survived and adapted and learned. Someone who had earned the right to make her own tactical decisions, however young she was. What do you need from us? Stay hidden. Stay safe. And when this is over, make sure command knows what the mercenaries are really doing here. Make sure they get shut down permanently. That is it? That is everything. Maya stood, shouldered her rifle. Tomorrow at dawn, they are going to learn why this is called the dead zone. She started to leave, then paused. Your grandfather, the one who taught you to hunt. He was a good man. I remember him. He was. Cross felt emotion tighten his throat. He died 6 months after we were here. I am sorry. Maya's voice softened slightly. The good ones always die too soon. Then she was gone, melting into the forest with a silence that made Cross question whether she had ever really been there. He stood alone in the clearing as afternoon shadows lengthened, processing what had just happened, processing the fact that the scared 7-year-old he remembered had transformed into something the Army would classify as a high-value asset, a solo operator with 3 years of field experience in hostile territory, a ghost who had learned to wage war against impossible odds. Cross made his way back to his team, found the Santos with the rest of the Rangers in their observation position, 8 professionals scanning the valley below with equipment that cost more than most cars. Report, Santos said. Cross told them everything. About Maya, about her 3 years alone, about the intelligence she provided, about the planned ambush tomorrow. The team listened in silence. When he finished, Santos spoke first. Sir, with respect, we are trusting the tactical assessment of a 16-year-old. A 16-year-old who has survived 3 years in hostile territory, who has better intelligence on enemy positions than our entire operational brief. Who knows this terrain like we know our hometowns? Cross looked at each of his team members. I know how this sounds, but I am telling you, she is the real deal. What is the play? Corporal Jake Whitmore asked. He was their designated marksman, 24 years old and probably the best shot in the company. We observe, we record, we provide her assessment to command, and if things go wrong tomorrow, we provide support. And if things go right, then we witness what asymmetric warfare looks like when executed by someone who truly knows their ground. The team settled in for the night. Standard watch rotation, defensive perimeter, professional procedure maintained, even though Cross suspected Maya could walk through their position without being detected if she wanted. Cross took first watch, sat looking out at the forest where somewhere a teenage girl was preparing to fight a battle that should never have been hers. He thought about his grandfather, about the lessons learned in Pennsylvania hardwoods, about patience and understanding terrain and respecting what you hunted. His grandfather would have understood Maya, would have recognized someone who had learned the same lessons, but at a cost that made hunting deer seem innocent, would have been proud and heartbroken, both at the same time. Dawn came gray and cold, fog thick enough to reduce visibility to maybe 50 yards. Perfect conditions for an ambush. Perfect conditions for someone who knew the terrain intimately to operate against people who did not. Cross had his team in position by 05:30. High ground with good observation. Weapons ready but not expecting to engage. Cameras recording. This was documentation mission now. The mercenaries moved into position at 0600. Cross watched through his scope as they established what they clearly thought was a perfect trap. Pincer movement designed to catch his team in crossfire. 22 personnel deployed with professional precision. They were good, well-trained, equipped with modern weapons and communication gear. Under different circumstances, they would be a legitimate threat. But these were not different circumstances. The first shot came at 06:15, single crack that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Through the fog, Cross could not see the shooter, could not see the target. Just saw one mercenary drop without a sound. Chaos erupted. Men diving for cover, shouting in Russian, trying to establish where the threat was coming from. Second shot, another man down, different angle, impossible angle based on the first shot unless the shooter had relocated impossibly fast. Cross realized what she was doing. She was not trying to kill all of them. She was creating the illusion of multiple shooters, making them think they were surrounded. Third shot, fourth, fifth, each from a different position, each creating more confusion and fear. The mercenaries started falling back. Not retreat, not yet, but consolidation, trying to establish defensive positions. That was when Maya showed to them what real tactical superiority looked like. Shots started targeting equipment instead of people. Radios exploding, GPS units destroyed, weapons damaged. She was systematically removing their ability to coordinate and navigate. Then the forest itself seemed to turn against them. Branches falling, trees creaking ominously, sounds that could have been wildlife or could have been people moving through heavy brush. Psychological warfare at its finest. Cross watched it through his scope as hardened mercenaries started to break, started to show fear, started to question whether they were fighting a person or something else entirely. By 0700, they were in full retreat, running through terrain they did not know, making mistakes, getting separated. Maya let them run, did not pursue, did not need to. She had made her point. This territory was claimed. The price of occupation was too high. Cross counted casualties as the mercenaries fled. 8 confirmed dead, 5 wounded, the rest scattered and demoralized. One teenage girl had just routed a professional mercenary force. The fog was lifting when Cross saw her. Just for a moment, a silhouette on a distant ridge, looking back toward his position. Then she was gone. Santos lowered her binoculars. Did we just see what I think we saw? We saw what happens when someone fights for their home instead of a paycheck. Cross started packing gear. Get command on the line. Tell them we have comprehensive intelligence on hostile operations and recommend immediate intervention. What about the girl? What girl? Cross looked at his sergeant. We saw no civilians, just observed enemy forces operating in the area. That is our report. Santos understood. The team understood. Maya Reeves would remain a ghost, would remain free to protect her territory in ways official forces never could. They extracted that afternoon, hiking back to their insertion point where helicopters would retrieve them. Behind them, the valley lay quiet, peaceful, giving no sign of the battle that had just been fought. Cross looked back once, wondered if Maya was watching, wondered if she understood what she had given them. Not just intelligence, but hope. Proof that dedication and knowledge and absolute commitment could overcome impossible odds. His grandfather would have called it the hunter's advantage. Knowing your ground better than prey knew theirs. Maya had taken that lesson and elevated it to art form. Back at base, Cross filed his report. Comprehensive intelligence on mercenary operations, tactical assessment, recommendations for official response. Everything command needed to shut down the illegal mining survey operation. He left out one detail: the ghost who had provided half the information. The guardian who had been fighting this war alone for 3 years. Some things did not belong in official reports. Some things existed in spaces between documentation and reality. Maya Reeves was one of those things. 2 weeks later, Cross received word that a multi-agency task force had raided the mercenary base camp. 23 arrests, seizure of equipment and documentation proving illegal, prospecting for uranium deposits, environmental violations that would take years to untangle. The operation was shut down, the valley was safe. Cross wondered if Maya knew, wondered if she understood that her intelligence had made the difference. Late that night, his phone buzzed, an unknown number, single text message. Thank you for keeping your word. Tell your team the land remembers friends. Mister. Cross stared at the message, wondered how she had gotten his number, wondered how she had sent a text from the middle of nowhere. Then he smiled. Some questions did not need answers. He texted back, your father would be proud. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then a final message. I hope so. Stay safe, Captain. Cross saved the number, labeled it Ghost. Then he poured himself a drink and thought about a 7-year-old girl showing him wolf tracks. About a 16-year-old warrior defending territory with skill that would shame most special forces operators. About the cost of survival and the price of protection and the thin line between guardian and predator. Somewhere in the Cascade Mountains, Maya Reeves sat in her shelter and cleaned her rifle. Routine maintenance performed with the automatic precision of long practice. The mercenaries were gone. The valley was quiet. The wolves were safe. She had protected what her father died to protect, had used everything he taught her plus everything the wilderness had taught her, had survived, had adapted, had become exactly what the land needed. The cost had been childhood, had been innocence, had been pieces of herself she could never reclaim. But some costs were worth paying. Tomorrow she would check the wolf den, would verify the pack was healthy, would continue the research her father started and she had inherited. Tonight, she was just a guardian watching over territory that had become more home than anywhere else could ever be. The forest was quiet except for distant wolf song, territory claims echoing across the valley, voices announcing that this land belonged to those who had always lived here. Maya understood that song now, was part of that song whether she had been born to it or not. The wilderness had claimed her, had shaped her, had made her into exactly what it needed, and she would continue protecting it, one precise shot at a time, one calculated choice at a time, one day at a time, for as long as she had breath and bullets and the will to stand between threat and home. The ghost of Black Pine, the guardian of the Cascades, the girl who learned to speak wolf and forgot how to be anything else. Home Elena Volkov received the news about the Valley operations collapse while sitting in a corporate office in Vancouver, 23 men arrested, equipment seized. 3 years of groundwork destroyed by what her surviving personnel were calling a ghost. She was 42 years old and she had stopped believing in ghosts 20 years ago when Chechen rebels put a bullet through her daughter's skull during an operation that was supposed to be a simple extraction. There were no ghosts, only people who had learned to hide well, people who understood terrain and tactics, people who could be found if you were willing to pay the price. Volkov had spent 15 years in Spetsnaz before going private, had operated in Chechnya and Georgia and Syria, had learned that the difference between victory and defeat was often just willingness to be more ruthless than your opponent. She pulled up the intelligence reports, read them with the analytical precision that had kept her alive through conflicts that killed softer people. 22 mercenaries routed by what appeared to be a single shooter, tactics consistent with advanced sniper training, intimate knowledge of terrain, psychological warfare techniques that suggested military background. But the survivors reported something else, something that did not fit military profiles. They said the shooter was young, possibly female, moving through terrain with a silence that suggested either exceptional training or something else entirely. One survivor, still shaking 3 days after the incident, had sworn he saw her, briefly, through fog, a girl, teenager, with eyes that did not blink. Volkov did not dismiss the report, did not assume panic or imagination. She had learned long ago that the most dangerous operators were often the ones nobody expected, the ones who did not fit profiles or patterns. She made a phone call, encrypted line to a contact in Seattle. "I need information on Dr. James Reeves, wildlife researcher, killed 3 years ago in the Cascade Mountains. I need to know everything. Family, associates, background, everything." The response came 6 hours later. Comprehensive file. Dr. James Reeves, respected ecologist, murdered during what was officially ruled a cabin fire, though inconsistencies in the investigation suggested foul play. Wife divorced, 1 daughter. Volkov stared at the daughter's information. Maya Reeves, age 13 at time of incident, presumed dead in the same fire. Body never recovered. Presumed dead. Volkov had been hunting people long enough to know what presumed meant. It meant nobody had looked hard enough. It meant convenient assumptions replacing actual evidence. She pulled up topographical maps of the region, studied the terrain, calculated survival probabilities for a 13-year-old alone in wilderness. Low, very low, but not zero. If the girl had survived, if she had somehow learned to live in that environment, if she had been protecting her father's research area for 3 years, that would explain everything. The intimate terrain knowledge, the defensive rather than offensive tactical pattern, the psychological warfare designed to make occupation too expensive rather than impossible. A child protecting home would fight differently than a soldier following orders, would fight with desperation and creativity born from having nothing to lose. Volkov felt something unfamiliar stir in her chest. Not sympathy. She had burned that capacity out years ago, but something close. Recognition, maybe. Understanding what it took to survive when the universe itself seemed determined to crush you. Her daughter had been 16 when she died. Same age this girl would be now if she had survived. Volkov closed the file and made another call. I am going to Washington State. I need a team. Not contractors this time. Real operators. People who can track a ghost. 2 weeks later, Volkov stood on the ridge where Captain Cross had stood 2 months earlier, looking down at a valley that had consumed 3 years of planning and millions of dollars in investment. She had brought 12 personnel, all former special forces from various countries, all specialists in tracking and manhunting, all expensive enough that they would not run the moment things became difficult. The tactical briefing had been simple. Someone was operating in this valley with high-level fieldcraft, someone who had successfully resisted a mercenary force and caused American military intervention, someone who needed to be found. Volkov did not mention the ghost stories, did not mention a possibly teenage girl living wild in the mountains. Her team would think she was crazy. She would prove them wrong. The first week they found nothing. The valley was quiet, too quiet. No sign of recent human presence beyond the abandoned mercenary camp. But Volkov knew what to look for. The absence of evidence was itself evidence. Areas that were too undisturbed. Trails that showed no use but led to strategic positions. Water sources that were accessible but somehow never visited. Someone was moving through this valley with a lightness that left almost no trace. Someone who knew they were being hunted and was adapting. On the 8th day, they found the first cache, hidden so well that they only discovered it because one of Volkov's trackers literally fell through the camouflaged entrance. Underground storage. Empty now, but showing signs of long-term use. Volkov examined the site with professional interest. Efficient layout, proper moisture control, solar panels for power. This was not improvised survival. This was systematic preparation over extended time. She found a notebook. Weather damaged but partially legible. Research notes in a precise hand. Observations about wolf behavior. Migration patterns. Ecosystem dynamics. Dr. James Reeves's work, continued by someone else, by his daughter. Volkov felt certainty settle into her bones. The girl had survived, had inherited her father's research, had been living in this valley for 3 years, fighting a war to protect work her father died for. It should have been impossible. But Volkov had learned that impossible was just a word people used before someone proved them wrong. That night, she made a decision that would have shocked her team if they had understood it. She was not going to kill the girl. She was going to find her, talk to her, understand her. Because anyone who could survive 3 years alone and fight off a professional military force deserved that much respect. Maya knew they were different the moment they entered her territory. These were not mercenaries operating for profit. These were hunters, professional, disciplined, moving with the careful precision of people who understood exactly what they were doing. She watched from concealment as they systematically worked through the valley, setting up observation posts, establishing patterns, using drones with thermal imaging that forced her to move only at dawn and dusk when temperature differentials made detection harder. They found her secondary cache on day 8. Maya watched through her rifle scope as they examined her father's notes, saw the woman who was clearly in command read the observations with what looked like respect. That bothered her more than the discovery itself. She could handle enemies who wanted to kill her. She had been handling that for 3 years. But someone who looked at her father's work with appreciation was different, complicated. Maya relocated to her most remote position, 8 miles deeper into wilderness that most people would not attempt to navigate. Terrain so difficult that even experienced trackers would need days to cover. But these hunters were patient. They did not rush, did not make the mistakes the mercenaries had made. They understood they were in someone else's territory and they moved accordingly. By the end of the second week, Maya was being pushed harder than she had been in 3 years. Could not stay in any position more than one night. Could not hunt properly because the sound would give away her location. Could not risk fire because smoke was visible for miles. She was running out of cache supplies, running out of safe positions, running out of options. For the first time since her father died, Maya felt something close to fear. She needed help, but asking for help meant exposure, meant admitting she could not handle this alone, meant breaking 3 years of self-imposed isolation. Maya pulled out the satellite phone from her emergency supplies, the one her father had marked emergency only. They can track this. She stared at it for a long time. Then she entered the number Captain Cross had left in his final text message, typed out a message. Ghost to Ranger 6, being hunted by professionals. 12 personnel, advanced equipment, running out of positions, need tactical assessment. Not asking for extraction. Just need to know what I am facing, Mr. She hit send before she could change her mind. Then she pulled the battery from the phone and relocated immediately. They would have triangulated that signal, would know approximately where it came from. She needed to be somewhere else when they arrived. Cross received the message during a training exercise at Fort Benning, saw the sender, felt his stomach drop. He excused himself from the exercise and made a call to a contact in intelligence, asked about activity in the Cascade region, specifically about any operations that might target a high-value individual in remote wilderness. The answer came back within an hour. No American operations. But chatter suggested Elena Volkov had taken personal interest in the area. Former Spetsnaz commander, currently working private sector, specialized in manhunting operations. If Volkov was hunting Maya, the girl was in serious danger. Cross made a decision that could end his career. He pulled up Maya's message and sent a response using encrypted channels that would be much harder to trace. Ghost, you are facing Elena Volkov, former Russian Special Forces, best tracker I have ever heard of. She has resources and patience. Will not stop until she finds you. But she is not mercenary. Has code. Suggestion, consider contact rather than conflict. She might respect what you have done. Might be more ally than enemy. Your call. Trust your instinct. Ranger 6. He added coordinates for a dead drop location, somewhere neutral, somewhere Maya could leave a message if she wanted. Then he did something else. He called in a favor from his former commanding officer, asked for satellite surveillance of the valley. Just eyes. Just making sure a civilian asset was not in immediate danger. It was thin cover. Would not hold up if questioned seriously, but Cross did not care. He had met Maya when she was 7, had failed to check on her and her father after his grandfather died, had learned too late what had happened to them. He would not fail her again. Maya found Cross's response in the dead drop 2 days later. Read it 3 times. Considered the advice. Contact rather than conflict. Everything in her rebelled against the idea. 3 years alone had taught her that safety lay in isolation. That contact meant vulnerability. That other humans were threats to be avoided or eliminated. But Cross had kept his word before, had protected her identity, had helped shut down the mercenary operation, had earned trust in ways few people could. And Maya was tired, so tired. 3 years of constant vigilance, 3 years of carrying weight no teenager should carry, 3 years of being guardian and warrior and ghost with no moment of rest. Maybe Cross was right. Maybe Volkov was different. Maya spent a day considering options. Then she made a decision that would have shocked her younger self. She was going to make contact, not surrender, not alliance, just conversation. Find out what Volkov wanted, establish whether peace was possible. And if peace was not possible, at least she would know her enemy better. She chose the location carefully. Open clearing, good sightlines, multiple escape routes. She could be there and gone before Volkov could respond if things went wrong. Maya used the satellite phone one more time, this time calling a number she had not called in 3 years. Her mother's number. It rang 4 times before a familiar voice answered. Hello? Maya's throat closed. 3 years of isolation. 3 years of not speaking except to herself and occasionally to the wolves. Her voice came out rough, unfamiliar. Mom. Silence. Then a sound that might have been a sob or might have been laughter or might have been both. Maya? Oh God, Maya, is that really you? It is me. Where are you? Are you safe? Are you hurt? The questions came rapid fire, desperate. I am okay. I am in the mountains. I have been here since Dad died. Since, Sarah Reeves's voice broke. 3 years. You have been alive for 3 years and you did not call? I could not. Maya felt tears she had not allowed herself for so long. They were hunting me, looking for me. If I contacted you, they would have found me through you. Who? Who was hunting you? The people who killed Dad. The people who want what he found. I have been protecting his research, protecting the land. You are 16 years old. Sarah's voice was equal parts grief and rage. You should be in school. You should be safe. You should be. I am exactly where I need to be. Maya kept her voice steady. I called to tell you I am alive, to tell you I am sorry, and to tell you that I might not survive the next few weeks. What? Maya, no. Whatever's happening, we can get help. We can. Mom, listen, there are people hunting me. Professional people. If they find you, they might try to use you to get to me. You need to be careful. You need to. The line went dead. Not a disconnection, A cut, deliberate. Maya felt ice slide through her veins. She had been on the phone for 90 seconds. Long enough for a trace if someone was monitoring Sarah's line. Long enough for someone to find her mother's location. She had just made a terrible mistake. Maya was moving before conscious thought finished processing. Abandoning the satellite phone, running through terrain she knew by heart toward the nearest road access, towards Seattle, toward her mother. It was 40 miles, through wilderness that would take most hikers 3 days to cross. Maya had to do it in less than 12 hours. She ran through the night, pushed her body past exhaustion into someplace beyond pain, used every shortcut, every dangerous route, every technique she had learned for covering ground fast. Dawn found her at the tree line, looking down at highway, at civilization she had not seen in 3 years. She had no money, no identification, no way to get to Seattle except the skills she had. Maya flagged down a logging truck, told the driver her car had broken down, and she needed a ride to the city. He looked at her with concern, this ragged teenage girl appearing out of the forest like something wild. But he let her in, drove her south while asking questions she deflected with practiced ease. She made Seattle by noon, had the driver drop her 3 blocks from her mother's apartment, moved through the city like a ghost. Too many people, too much noise, too much everything. 3 years in wilderness made her hypersensitive. Every car could be a threat. Every person could be an enemy. The city was sensory overload that made her want to run back to the forest where things made sense. But her mother was in danger because of her. She had to fix this. Maya reached the apartment building, watched from across the street, saw 2 men in a car that did not belong. Professional surveillance, waiting for something. Waiting for her. She circled the block, found the service entrance, picked the lock with skills learned from 3 years of getting into places she was not supposed to be, made her way up the stairs to the 3rd floor. Her mother's door was closed, no sign of forced entry, but Maya knew, could feel it. She tried the handle, unlocked. Maya drew her knife. The rifle was too obvious for the city, but she had learned other ways to fight. She pushed the door open slowly, scanned the apartment that had once been familiar and now felt like visiting another planet. Her mother sat on this couch, hands zip-tied behind her back, tape across her mouth, eyes wide with fear and relief and 1,000 other emotions. Standing behind her was Elena Volkov. The Russian woman was smaller than Maya expected, maybe 5'7", lean like a distance runner, grace showing in her dark hair, scars visible on her hands and neck. She held no weapon, but her posture suggested she did not need one. "Miss Reeves?" Volkov's English was accented but clear. "I was hoping you would come." Maya evaluated the situation with the tactical precision 3 years had taught her. One hostile, mother as leverage. No immediate backup visible, but certainly nearby. Multiple escape routes, but none that allowed taking her mother. "Let her go." Maya kept her voice flat, empty. "This is between you and me." "Yes, it is. That is exactly what I want to talk about." Volkov moved slightly, not threatening, but not non-threatening either. "You have been protecting the valley for 3 years, fighting my people, surviving impossible odds. I want to understand why. My father died protecting that land. I am finishing what he started. By killing 21 people. By protecting an ecosystem from people who would destroy it for profit." Volkov was quiet for a moment. "I lost my daughter when she was 16. Same age you are now. Chechen rebels killed her during an operation." Maya said nothing. This was manipulation, building sympathy, making her lower her guard. "When I learned about you, about what you had survived, what you had become, I was curious," Volkov continued. "How does a 13-year-old girl survive 3 years alone? How does she become effective enough to fight professional military forces?" "Necessity." "No." Volkov shook her head. "Necessity creates desperation. You are not desperate. You are precise, disciplined, operating with tactical sophistication that takes most people years to develop. Someone taught you well. My father taught me to understand the land. The land taught me everything else." "Impressive." Volkov's tone was genuine. "I have been hunting people for 20 years. You are one of the best I have tracked. Maybe the best." "Then why are you here? Why take my mother?" "Because I am not here to kill you. I am here to make you an offer." Maya felt off balance. This was not how interrogations worked. Not how hostage situations played out. "What offer?" "Work with me. Use your skills for something bigger than protecting one valley. There are places all over the world that need guardians. Ecosystems being destroyed. wildlife being slaughtered, people who care more about profit than preservation. You could make a real difference by becoming a mercenary, by becoming a professional. Volkov's eyes were serious. I have resources, training, equipment. I could teach you things that would make you even more effective. And you would be paid well enough to support your mother. Give her the life she deserves instead of spending 3 years thinking her daughter is dead. Maya looked at her mother, saw the tears streaming down Sarah's face, saw the plea in her eyes. Come home. Be safe. Stop this. 3 years ago, that would have been enough. But Maya was not the girl from 3 years ago. No, Maya said simply, I protect the valley. That is my purpose. That is what my father would want. Your father would want you alive and whole, not living wild and killing people. You did not know my father. No, Volkov agreed, but I know what it costs to fight alone for too long. Know what it does to your soul. You are 16 years old and you have the eyes of a soldier 3 times your age. That is not a gift. That is a curse. It is what I chose. Did you, or did you just survive and convince yourself survival was choice? The question hit harder than Maya expected. She had been so focused on protecting the valley, on honoring her father's legacy, on being the guardian the land needed. Had she ever stopped to ask if this was what she actually wanted? I am giving you an option, Volkov said. Come work with me. Bring your mother somewhere safe. Learn to use your skills in ways that do not require you to be alone. And the valley? We leave it alone. I will ensure no one threatens it. My people will not return. I will personally guarantee its protection. Why? Because you earned it. Because anyone who can fight the way you fought deserves respect. Volkov paused, and because my daughter would have been your age now, I could not save her. Maybe I can help you instead. Maya felt something crack inside her. Some wall she had built 3 years ago to survive what should have killed her. Some barrier between the child she had been and the weapon she had become. She looked at her mother, at the woman who had given her life and then lost her for 3 years, who had grieved and moved on and now faced the impossible reality of her daughter alive, but transformed into something barely recognizable. Maya made her decision. No, the word was quiet but absolute. I appreciate the offer, but my answer is no. Volkov's expression did not change. Why? Because I am not for hire. I am not a mercenary or a soldier or anything except what I chose to be. I am the guardian of Black Pine Valley. That is my identity. That is my purpose, and I will not abandon it. Even if it means staying alone? Even then. Even if it means your mother spends the rest of her life worrying about you? Maya looked at Sarah, memorized her face, tried to find words for feelings she had suppressed for 3 years. I am sorry, Mom. I am so sorry. But I cannot leave. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The land needs someone who understands it, who will fight for it. That is me now. Sarah made a muffled sound behind the tape, tears flowing freely. Volkov watched this exchange with an expression Maya could not read. Then she did something unexpected. She cut the zip ties, removed the tape from Sarah's mouth. Your daughter is the most stubborn person I have ever met, Volkov said. You should be proud and terrified, both at the same time. Sarah rushed to Maya, wrapped her arms around a daughter who felt more like stone than flesh, held on like letting go would make her disappear again. Maya stood rigid in the embrace. 3 years without human touch. 3 years of being alone. Her body did not remember how to accept comfort, but slowly, so slowly, she brought her arms up, returned the hug, let herself be just a daughter for one moment. I have to go, Maya said finally. They will be looking for me, following me. I cannot stay. Then I am coming with you. Sarah's voice was firm. I am not losing you again. You cannot survive where I live. Maya gently pulled away. And I cannot protect you in the valley both. This is the only way. She looked at Volkov. You will let us leave? I will. Volkov nodded. I made you an offer. You refused. I respect that. But know this. If you ever change your mind, if you ever need help, contact me. She handed Maya a card. Just a phone number, nothing else. Why, Maya asked. Why respect my choice? Because I have spent 20 years working for people who do not respect anything, who destroy for profit and kill for convenience. You are trying to protect something. That matters. Maya pocketed the card, looked at her mother one last time. I will call you. Not often, but I will call. And maybe someday I will come back. When the valley is safe. When I am ready. I will wait. Sarah's voice broke. However long it takes, I will wait. Maya left through the service entrance, moved through Seattle like a ghost, Caught a ride north from a trucker who asked no questions. Made it back to the tree line by nightfall. She was exhausted, emotionally drained, but also somehow lighter. She had seen her mother, had made her choice, had confirmed that protecting the valley was not just survival, it was purpose. Cross received her message 2 days later. Ranger 6 met Volkov, declined her offer, mother is safe, returning to valley. Request you maintain satellite surveillance for 2 more weeks. Want to make sure Volkov keeps her word. Thank you for the advice. It helped. Ghost. Cross smiled and typed a response. Ghost. Proud of you. Surveillance approved. Stay safe. And remember, you are not completely alone. You have friends, even if they operate from distance. Ranger 6. Maya read the message in her shelter. Friends. She had not had friends in 3 years. Had convinced herself she did not need them. Maybe she had been wrong about that too. She looked out at the forest, at the valley she had protected through 3 years of impossible choices, at the home she had claimed through blood and survival and absolute commitment. The land was quiet, the wolves were hunting, the ecosystem her father died to protect continued its processes. And Maya Reeves continued her watch, not because she had to, but because she chose to. The guardian of Black Pine, the girl who refused to be anything else. Home. 6 months after Elena Volkov walked away from the valley, Maya Reeves turned 17 in the way she had turned 16 and 15 and 14, alone except for the wolves, marking the passage of time by seasons rather than calendars, measuring age in skills acquired rather than years survived. But something had changed after Seattle, after seeing her mother, after being offered a different path and choosing this one with eyes fully open. It was no longer just survival. It was no longer just protection born from trauma and grief. It was purpose, chosen, owned, hers. Maya sat in her primary shelter as autumn rain drummed against the roof she had waterproofed with pine pitch and patience. She was writing in the journal that had grown from trauma documentation into something else. Something that looked more like her father's research notes every day. September 24th. Wolfpack denning behavior shows adaptation to reduced human pressure. Alpha female now 8 years old, beginning to show age markers. Juvenile from last year's litter displaying early leadership tendencies. Pack dynamics shifting towards succession. Ecosystem response to removal of mercenary presence includes return of elk to lower valley corridors and increased salmon runs in previously contaminated watershed sections. She wrote with the clinical precision her father had modeled, turning observation into data, turning protection into science. Because that was what guardianship actually meant. Not just keeping threats away, but understanding what you were protecting deeply enough to document its value for others who would come after. Maya had been thinking about legacy lately, about her father's research gathering dust in hidden caches instead of contributing to broader ecological understanding, about knowledge dying with her if something happened before she could pass it on. She had been thinking about the future beyond next week or next month, about what came after. The satellite phone buzzed. Maya looked at it with the wariness 3 years had taught her. Only 3 people had this number: Cross, her mother, and Volkov. The message was from Cross. Ghost. New development. Logging company filed permits for area adjacent to your valley. Federal land. Legal operation but timing suspicious. Suspect they are stalking horse for mining interests. Permits approved. Operations begin in 2 weeks. Thought you should know. Coordinates attached. Ranger 6. Maya pulled up the coordinates on her salvaged GPS unit, studied the topographical data. The logging area was 3 miles from the primary wolf denning site, close enough that heavy equipment and human activity would disrupt hunting patterns, close enough that road construction would fragment habitat, close enough to destroy what her father had died protecting through legal means instead of illegal ones. She had fought mercenaries, had adapted to professional hunters, had survived everything the wilderness and human malice could throw at her. But she could not fight paperwork and permits with a rifle. Maya stared at the ceiling of her shelter and faced a truth she had been avoiding for months. Protection required more than just keeping threats out of the valley. It required engaging with the systems that determined how land was used. It required operating in the world beyond the forest. It required her to stop being a ghost. She typed a response to Cross. Ranger 6, need advice. How do I fight legal threats? Ghost. The response came quickly. Ghost. You do not fight them. You join them. Make your father's research public. Prove the area's ecological value. Force environmental review. Use the system instead of fighting it. But that requires coming forward, requires testimony, requires you to be Maya Reeves, the researcher's daughter, instead of Maya Reeves, the ghost. Your choice. I can help either way. Ranger 6. Maya read the message 3 times. Coming forward, ending the isolation, stepping into light after 3.5 years in shadow. Everything in her resisted. Safety was invisibility. Survival was staying hidden. The ghost protocol that had kept her alive demanded she remain unknown. But the ghost could not testify, could not present research, could not make the case for protection through channels that actually mattered. The ghost could only fight, and this was not a fight she could win with bullets. Maya made her decision. She called her mother for the first time since Seattle. Sarah Reeves answered on the first ring. Maya? Mom, I need your help. Anything. Sarah's voice was immediate. Whatever you need. Dad's research. All of it. I have been continuing his work for 3 years, documenting wolf behavior and ecosystem recovery. I need to publish it, need to make it matter. Can you help me with that? Silence. Then Sarah's voice came back different. Professional. This was Dr. Sarah Reeves now, the clinical psychologist who had navigated academic bureaucracy for 20 years. Yes, I can help. Where is the research? Hidden in 6 locations across the valley. I can compile it, but I need. Maya hesitated. I need to come back, not permanently, but long enough to present the findings, to testify about the ecological value of the area. You are coming home. It was not a question. After 3.5 years, you are finally coming home. For a little while, I am not. I cannot just leave this place, Mom. It is who I am now. I know, Sarah's voice was gentle. I have had a long time to accept that. Just come home long enough for me to see you are real, that you are safe, that you are still my daughter under everything else you became. I am still your daughter. Maya felt her voice crack slightly. I promise. 2 weeks later, Maya Reeves walked out of the wilderness for the first time in 3.5 years. She carried a backpack containing her father's original research, her own documentation, and the rifle she could not quite bring herself to leave behind. Cross met her at the tree line. He barely recognized her. The 7-year-old girl from his memory was gone completely. Even the 16-year-old he had briefly encountered was different now. This was someone who moved like the forest itself, economical, efficient, alert in ways that suggested constant awareness of threat perimeters and escape routes. Maya, he said. Captain? She nodded once. Thank you for meeting me. Just cross now. I am on leave. Officially, this is personal time helping a family friend. Family friend? Maya tasted the phrase. Is that what we are? I knew you when you were 7, knew your father, failed to check on you both. Cross's voice was heavy. Maybe if I had, you could not have stopped what happened. Maya's tone was certain. My father knew the risks, made his choices, prepared me as well as he could. You have no guilt to carry. Still feels like I do. They drove to Seattle in silence. Maya pressed against the passenger door. Too much noise, too much movement. The highway felt like sensory assault after years of forest quiet. Cross watched her flinch at every truck that passed, saw her eyes constantly scanning for threats, recognized trauma responses he had seen in combat veterans. She was 17 years old and she had the hypervigilance of someone who had spent years in hostile territory. Your mother is, Cross started. I know, Maya cut him off. I know it will be difficult. I know I am not the daughter she remembers. I know she will try to fix me, but I am not broken. I am adapted. There is a difference. Cross nodded. Just remember she loves you. Whatever you became, however you changed, that does not change. Maya did not respond, just stared out the window at civilization she no longer recognized. Sarah Reeves had prepared for this meeting like a military operation, had cleared her schedule, had stocked the apartment with food she hoped her daughter might eat, had researched reintegration challenges for people who had experienced extended isolation. But nothing prepared her for the reality of Maya walking through the door. Her daughter was taller, leaner, moving with a controlled precision that suggested constant calculation. Her eyes swept the apartment like threat assessment. Her posture remained balanced between stillness and explosive action. This was not the 13-year-old who had left for summer vacation and never come home. This was someone forged by survival into something barely recognizable as the child Sarah had raised. Maya, Sarah's voice broke. Hi, Mom. They stood 3 feet apart, neither quite sure how to bridge the distance. Finally, Sarah moved forward, wrapped her arms around her daughter, felt the initial rigidity, felt it slowly ease into something approximating acceptance. "I missed you," Sarah whispered. "Every single day. I missed you too." Maya's voice was quiet. "I thought about you, about this, about coming back. But I could not until now." "I know, I understand. Do you?" Maya pulled back, looked at her mother directly. "Do you understand what I became out there? What I had to do to survive?" Sarah held her daughter's gaze. "I know you killed people. Cross told me it was justified, told me you were protecting yourself and the land. Does that bother you, that your daughter is a killer?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke with the honesty their relationship deserved. "Yes, it bothers me terribly. Not because I judge you, but because I know what it takes. I work with veterans, with people who had to make impossible choices. I know what that does to someone, especially someone so young." "I do not feel guilty," Maya said. I know I should, but I do not. That bothers me more. But it does not change that I love you. Does not change that I am proud you survived. Does not change anything except how I worry about you." Maya felt something ease in her chest, some tension she had been carrying since Seattle. "I have 3.5 years of research to compile. I need your help making it academically credible, making it matter." Sarah nodded. "Show me." They spent the next week transforming field notes and observations into formal research documentation. Sarah had connections in academic publishing, knew which journals accepted posthumous submissions with proper attribution, knew how to frame ecological research for maximum impact. Maya's documentation was meticulous. Detailed population studies, behavioral observations, ecosystem response data, 3.5 years of work that would have taken most researchers a decade to accumulate. It was publishable. More than publishable. It was groundbreaking. "You have your father's gift," Sarah said one evening. "His eye for connections others miss. His patience for observation." I had a good teacher. Maya was studying the compiled data on Sarah's computer, and 3 years with nothing to do except observe. "This will make a difference," Sarah said. "This will force environmental review of the logging permits. Might stop them completely. That is the goal." "But Maya," Sarah hesitated. "This means exposure, means people will know you survived, will want to know how, will ask questions you may not want to answer." "I know." Maya had considered this. "Let them ask. I do not have to answer. The research speaks for itself." The academic review process moved faster than expected when the lead researcher was the daughter of a murdered scientist presenting work that proved her father's final discoveries. Within 3 weeks, Maya's research was accepted for publication in the Journal of Wildlife Management with a companion piece in conservation biology. The media attention was immediate and intense. "Daughter of slain researcher emerges from wilderness with groundbreaking study." The headlines wrote themselves. Maya gave one interview, one carefully controlled conversation with a journalist Sarah trusted. She answered questions about her father's work, about ecosystem documentation, about the ecological value of the valley. She did not answer questions about how she survived, about what she had done, about the 3.5 years between her father's death and her emergence. Those details belonged to her, to the forest, to the guardian and the ghost, not to public consumption. The logging permits were suspended pending environmental review. Federal agencies began investigating the accelerated approval process. Questions were raised about mining interests using timber operations as cover. Maya's research had accomplished what bullets never could, had protected the valley through data and documentation, enforcing the system to follow its own rules. 2 months after publication, Maya sat in Sarah's apartment and read the letter that had arrived via certified mail. "Miss Reeves," it began, "your research contribution has been remarkable. The data you have provided will influence conservation policy for years to come. We would like to offer you a position as field researcher with the U.S. Forest Service. Salary, benefits, and most importantly, official authority to continue your work in the Cascade region, with full federal support and protection. Please contact us to discuss terms." Maya stared at the letter. This was legitimacy. This was everything her father would have wanted. Official recognition, protected status, the ability to continue research without looking over her shoulder for mercenaries or hunters, the ability to be both guardian and scientist, ghost and researcher, wild and civilized. She called Cross, read him the letter. "Take it," he said immediately. "This gives you legal standing, gives you resources, gives you protection You have been operating without for 3 years. I would have to compromise, Maya said. Have to report to supervisors. Have to follow protocols. Have to be accountable. You would have to be part of the world instead of separate from it. Cross paused. That is called growing up, even for guardians. Maya smiled despite herself. When did you become so wise? I have had a good teacher lately. Teenage girl who taught me that dedication and knowledge matter more than equipment and numbers. She accepted the position. With conditions, she would maintain her primary research camp in the valley, would report quarterly instead of monthly, would have autonomy over research methods and areas of focus. The Forest Service agreed. They understood they were not hiring a normal researcher. They were legitimizing someone who had already proven herself more effective than any official presence could be. On Maya's 18th birthday, she stood at her father's grave. The cairn of stones had been weathered by 3 years of seasons. Moss grew in the gaps. The forest was slowly reclaiming the marker the way it reclaimed everything given enough time. She had brought flowers. Her mother's suggestion, a gesture that felt foreign after so long wild but somehow right. Hi, Dad. Maya spoke to the cairn, to the memory, to the presence she still felt sometimes in quiet moments. I did it. I finished your work. Got it published. Stopped the mining interests. Saved the valley. She paused. The forest around her was quiet, listening. I am not the daughter you raised. I am not the girl who spent summers learning to track wolves. I became something else. Something you probably would not recognize. Something that frightens Mom even though she tries to hide it. But I hope, you would be proud anyway. Because I did what you asked. I became the guardian this place needed. I protected what you died to protect. And now I am trying to be something more. Trying to be both wild and civilized. Both guardian and researcher. Both ghost and person. It is hard, Dad. Harder than surviving alone. Because surviving just required staying alive. This requires figuring out who I want to be now that I have choices again. A wolf howled in the distance. The alpha female, old now, gray around the muzzle, but still calling territory, still teaching the pack, still being exactly what she had always been. Maya smiled. Maybe that was the answer. Be exactly what you are. No apologies, no compromises on core identity. Guardian, researcher, daughter, ghost, all of it, all at once. She placed the flowers on the cairn, stood in silence for a long moment. Then she shouldered her pack and started back toward her camp. She had survey data to collect, wolf behavior to document, a valley to protect and understand and love with the totality her father had taught her. Behind her, the cairn stood silent, marking the place where Dr. James Reeves rested, where his legacy had been passed to a daughter who carried it forward in ways he never imagined. The forest accepted the flowers, would absorb them eventually, would turn them back into soil and nutrients and new growth. The cycle continuing as it always had, as it always would. 5 years after her father's death, Maya Reeves had become a name in conservation circles, had published 6 papers, had testified before Congress about wilderness protection, had become the public face of ecosystem research in the Pacific Northwest. But she still spent more time in the forest than in cities, still maintained her network of camps and caches, still moved through the valley with the silence 3 years alone had taught her. The wolves knew her now, accepted her presence as permanent fixture in their territory. The current alpha female was granddaughter of the wolf Maya had first encountered at age 13. The pack had changed, the valley had changed, but the essential patterns remained. Maya checked her satellite phone as she documented salmon spawning patterns in the creek her father had studied. 20 years earlier, message from Cross. Ghost, thought you should know. Elena Volkov contacted me, asked how you were doing, asked if you ever changed your mind about her offer, told her you were busy protecting the entire Pacific Northwest now. She said to tell you she is proud of you, said you remind her of her daughter. High praise from someone like her. Ranger 6. Maya smiled and typed a response. Ranger 6. Tell Volkov I appreciate the sentiment. Tell her if she ever wants to visit the valley as researcher instead of hunter, she is welcome. We could use someone with her tracking skills for the cougar study. Ghost. She sent the message and went back to her survey. The salmon were returning in numbers not seen in decades. The watershed cleanup was working. The ecosystem was healing. Her mother visited once a month now, hiked out to Maya's primary camp with supplies and letters and news from the world beyond the trees. Sarah had learned to accept that her daughter belonged here in ways she belonged nowhere else. Had learned that some people were not meant for suburbs and schedules. Some people needed wilderness like others needed oxygen. Maya was one of those people. On the 5-year anniversary of her father's death, Maya published a comprehensive study titled Ecosystem Recovery, following removal of anthropogenic stressors, a 5-year longitudinal study in Cascade Wilderness. It documented everything: the wolf pack recovery, the salmon return, the forest regeneration. The dedication read simply, "For Dr. James Reeves, who taught me to see connections others miss, and for the wilderness that taught me everything else." The paper became required reading in conservation biology programs across the country. Maya became someone universities wanted to recruit, someone agencies wanted to hire. She declined every offer. She had a job already, guardian of Black Pine Valley, researcher for the U.S. Forest Service. Voice for wilderness that could not speak for itself. That was enough. That was everything. Cross visited occasionally, brought his new team through for training exercises. Maya taught them fieldcraft the way her father had taught her, taught them to read terrain and respect the land and understand that the most powerful weapon was knowledge. The Rangers called her the Ghost, said it with respect, with recognition that she had earned a title most people spent careers pursuing. Maya called herself a researcher, found identity in science rather than mythology, preferred data to legend. But she knew what she was, what 3 years alone had forged, what 5 more years had refined. Guardian, protector, voice for the wild. The girl who learned to speak wolf and never quite learned to be fully human again. On her 21st birthday, Maya sat on a ridge overlooking the valley. Below her, the forest stretched in every direction, unchanged and constantly changing, ancient and new, wild and precious. This was home. This was purpose. This was the future her father had prepared her for without ever imagining exactly what preparation would require. She had survived, had adapted, had become something unique in ways that could never be replicated, had lost pieces of herself that could never be recovered, had gained understanding most people never achieved. The alpha female howled somewhere in the darkening valley. Territory claim, pack location, voice announcing presence and power and belonging. Maya smiled and howled back, her voice joining the chorus. Human and wolf, civilized and wild, past and future. The song echoing across the valley her father had loved, that she had protected, that she would continue protecting for as long as she had breath. Because that was what guardians did. They stood watch. They paid costs others could not imagine. They became exactly what was needed, even when it meant becoming something no one expected. Maya Reeves had become that, had earned it through blood and survival and choices that carved away everything soft. Had become the ghost of Black Pine, the voice for wilderness, the daughter who finished her father's work and then went beyond it. The wolves sang in the darkness. Maya sang with them. Home, purpose, identity. All of it contained in the simple act of voice joining voice in the ancient language of territory and belonging. This was who she was, who she had chosen to be, who she would remain. The guardian standing watch over 10,000 square miles of wilderness. The researcher documenting what most people never saw. The ghost who learned to be human again without forgetting how to be wild. The forest accepted her song, absorbed it, made it part of the symphony that had been playing since long before humans learned to speak. And Maya Reeves, 21 years old and forged by survival into something unique, sang into the darkness with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged, exactly who she was meant to be, exactly home. The end, but also the beginning, because protection was not a destination. It was a choice made every day, a commitment renewed with every sunrise. And Maya had learned long ago that the most important promises were the ones you kept even when no one was watching, especially when no one was watching. The wilderness remembered, the wolves remembered, the land remembered those who stood for it when standing meant sacrifice. Maya Reeves stood, would continue standing, for as long as the forest needed a guardian, for as long as she had breath to give, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one precise shot when necessary. The ghost of Black Pine, forever watching, forever protecting, forever home.